Rappers and music producers. It's Curtis King at CurtisKingBeats.com, and today we are discussing sample clearance. Many of you have asked me about the sample clearance process, and I can only offer you so much advice, but we have been actually blessed with the opportunity to speak with the sample clearance queen, Deborah Gardner. She has blessed us with her time. Her time is very valuable. She has had the opportunity to clear samples for some major artists, and not to disclose it on my end, I want her to have an opportunity to introduce herself. But today we are talking sample clearances. You guys know that I have been a sample-based producer for the majority, I should say, of my career before I transitioned to more original production. And in many ways, I'd like to return to that. So conversations like this are very important. But Deborah, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Absolutely. So for those that are unfamiliar with you and what it is that you do, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Deborah Mannis-Gardner. I'm DMG Clearances. I have been doing sample clearances since 1990, and that led into the foray of doing other musical clearances for grand rights like Hamilton. Video games, I handle all of Grand Theft Auto since San Andreas. We do commercials, Google Doodle, work with Puffy Ciroc. So we're kind of like all over the place, but my love and my specialty is doing sample clearances.
Okay. And what actually got you into this world of sample clearance?
It wasn't being handled legitimately back in 1990. It was people doing handshakes, T-shirt swaps, and not stuff. It was considered theft, and this genre of music was considered theft as well, and that it was a phase. It wasn't going to be around. And I was a fan of this. I came from a punk rock background, and so I thought there's a lot of similarities between punk rock and hip hop and rap.
Okay. Is there a lot of sample dealings within the punk rock world, or how does that work?
Oh, it was just, I think it's more of a rebellious movement of form. You know, there was a lot of criticism about sampling because people weren't playing instruments. They were utilizing other people's pre-existing copyright against the norm.
Right.
Now it has become the norm, and that's what's awesome about it.
Okay, excellent. So you being someone that obviously has a passion for that art form, I mean, you wouldn't get into the business of it, I'm assuming, if it's not something that's a passion of yours, because I know there's a lot of things that go into it. That being said, how do you view sampling as an art form?
Well, how do you view a collage as an art form? You know, it's you are taking something and you're creating music, you're creating something new. And although you're utilizing pre-existing elements to create your copyright, you are still creating something new, and that's art, and it's music, and it's awesome. And I think what's even more exciting now is due to technology and our phones and our laptops, and we'll probably go further into discussing Tracklib, but you don't have to have expensive equipment. You don't have to be this certain type of producer, that you can actually create this music yourself.
Absolutely. And thank you for mentioning that. Tracklib is actually the sponsor for today. And Tracklib is the reason why, shout out to Per, he's the reason why we even have this interview today. And you guys know that I've done a video or two in the past about how easy it's become to clear samples, especially using services like Tracklib. But in your opinion, Deborah, do you feel that, I mean, it's probably an obvious answer to that, but do you feel that it is more of a challenge because of the digital age to clear samples, or do you think that it's become significantly easier?
You know, some samples are still very difficult to clear, and some I can do in under 24 hours. I think because it's a digital age, we can move a lot faster because we can research copyright more efficiently. We're not relying just on the phone or a person being on the other end. On the flip side, because people, you know, digging through the crates used to mean going to record stores or buying stuff on the street, getting vinyl. Digging through the crates is now on a digital level where you are digging through the crates on Apple, you're digging through the crates on YouTube. And so you're finding more difficult copyrights to clear because there's obscure stuff on the internet that's out there for people to use.
Excellent. Yeah, that's something that I've had to deal with in the past. When I would sample for certain artists, they would give me these abstract records, and we would not know even what publisher to reach out to. and you know, a lot of them kind of, as you say, it is a theft to go about doing that without doing the proper steps in order to clear that? For those who are sort of the, I guess, rookies in this, and not too much intermediate knowledge about sample clearance, what in your definition constitutes a cleared sample?
Oh, if you've sent out a letter of request, you've gotten a written formal consent, you've negotiated a fee, and you've confirmed it. A contract doesn't necessarily deem it more clear than if you've got a quote in writing and you've confirmed it, because most of the major publishers do not even go to contract. Sony, ATV, Universal, Warner Chappell do not even do sample licenses. They send a letter saying, if we were to do a license, this is what it would look like. So your consent, and you know you've got something cleared, is just based on the correspondence that goes on back and forth. That's what DMG is doing. We are facilitating the clearance. We are reaching out to the copyright holder. We're negotiating a fee. We're making sure that there's something in writing, and then we confirm it.
Okay, and that process, I'm sure, can be very tedious, depending on whom you're dealing with.
It can, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. So the next question I have for you is: do you see or foresee a resurgence of sample-based music? Obviously, especially in hip hop specifically, because that's the genre that I know the best. It seems that a lot of producers have kind of shied away from sampling. Either it's from the pressure of the labels or the pressure of where the sound of music is going. Do you foresee a resurgence of sample-based music?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the Black Eyed Peas album is a perfect example. I don't know if you've taken a listen to it, but it is filled with samples.
Yeah.
And it's used as a form of seasoning. And so it was just wonderful working with Will on doing that album. So yeah, as a matter of fact, I've been talking about, I think it's almost like a resurgence of that 90s style of sampling.
Right.
I think it's come back to life. It's awesome. There are, and thanks to Tracklib, there are producers who would have never sampled that are now going to sample, like Zaytoven, who would never consider even going down that path, and now is looking at it as like a whole easy way of going about and doing it.
Right.
People that are always going to sample, and there are people who are never going to sample. And then, you have an interpolation where you take something and you either re-record it, the musical part, or you re-sing the vocals. And so you're cutting your budget by 2/3 by doing that. And it's like one clearance instead of two.
Excellent. And that's something about those 90s styled samples. I imagine I have to give you so much respect, especially clearing samples in the 90s. Me, I'm 33, so there's songs that I hear and I can just listen and hear, okay, that's Impeach the President, drum loop, and then I can hear certain vocal chops from a song from the 60s, and I just imagine that being a tremendous headache to try to get all of them to be on the same page. How does that generally work when you have multiple copyright holders trying to clear that?
It was harder in the 90s. When I worked with Common and I worked, with Redman, and they would have 6 or 7 samples in one song.
Oh my God.
100%. But now people are I think a little bit more understanding, and they kind of work with you to stay within that 100% range, and even again with Black Eyed Peas, I made sure that Will had a good piece of publishing on every one of those songs, and some of them had 4 samples on them. So you're working with people and you're saying, it really doesn't have that 30% use. It has a 5% use. And if you can't do it at 5%, we're going to have to take the sample off. So that's what the stuff that we're discussing. 5% on Marshall's album, Eminem's album, is a hell of a lot more money in that bank account for that writer and that publisher than 0%. So those are the things we try to take into account.
Excellent. So I'm hoping that you can, and I have just a few more questions, but I appreciate your time and all these answers, because I know it's going to help a lot of music producers who are afraid of sampling. And I always tell them, I say, with something like Tracklib, there's no longer a need to have a fear of sampling, because you have access. I believe I spoke to a representative who was saying there was over 60,000 samples to choose from.
Oh, and next there'll be even more. I mean, we're just growing tremendously. And what's nice about Tracklib, and it's different than those other libraries, these aren't just libraries of beats. These are pre-existing copyrights. So it's just like sampling anything else, except it's made a lot easier. It's got the stems there. You're going on the computer and you're doing the license right then and there. And I think that's what's pretty exciting about the whole thing. So my services are always going to be needed as well. But then to have that supplemental of having Tracklib as a means of digging through the crates and man, they've got some really unique, wild stuff in there.
Yeah, I was on there for a project that I can't speak about quite yet, but I was on there listening to music, and for someone who started off as a sample-based producer, I have to let you know I'm just getting goosebumps as I go through these samples because there's something different, whether it's the texture, whether it's the vinyl sounds in the background, whether it's, just the way music was put together in an era like the 60s or the 70s. It just feels differently. It feels warmer. So actually sitting there and listening to these samples is just a feeling that you're not going to get just with, the websites that have an abundance of sample libraries from producers that are more modern. It's just hard to duplicate that, So now, obviously, I don't want to get into something that is going to cause any issue with any relationships that you have. But what is an example, and you don't have to name any names, of a nightmare sample clearance story that you can share with us?
There was an A-list artist that was sampling something that's never been sampled before, and he actually flew out and met with the copyright holder, and they listened to it, and we started negotiating. And over a period of 1 year, where we thought we were almost at the end because it was tied to a film project as well, the copyright holder pulled out.
Oh my gosh!
Their mind, and it was hard to bring all these people to the table, kind of situation. And I was really disappointed that it fell through. And sadly, I don't think it'll ever come to light.
Oh my gosh. Well, we definitely don't want to end on that note. What would you say is an inspiring sample clearance story? To kind of contrast that, what would you say is an inspiring sample clearance story? I've had examples. To give you a kind of an example of what I mean, I've had an artist that I sampled for, and they got on the phone with the actual original band member from the song that we sampled. And they picked the phone up, when they listed their information online, and listened to the song while they were on the phone and gave them the go-ahead. Do you have any inspiring stories for us?
You know what? Not this last album that Marshall did, but the one even before that, where he sampled Bette Midler and where he sampled Dolores from the Cranberries. And they personally were on the phone listening to what Marshall had done. Now, Marshall wasn't on the phone. He doesn't get on the phone. But Tracy McNew and Lisa Donini and I were on the phone, along with these amazing songwriters and artists. And it was such a thrill, the way they all responded to Marshall's album, and Marshall's team being very grateful for the consent that we got. The Joan Jett, we had great samples on that album, and just a mutual love and respect. And that's, you don't have as many nightmarish stories as you think.
Right.
You get a lot of the positive stuff. You get a lot of, thank yous. I think it's great when you're using stuff that hasn't been sampled, that hasn't received income in a long time, and you're bringing it back to life. Because that's what samples do. That's what I'm always telling people. If someone samples your song and it hasn't earned revenue in a long time, once it gets out there and people hear it, other people are going to sample it.
Absolutely.
So it kind of is like the rebirth of music. It kind of brings it back to life. It gives it a resurgence. Let's not forget, that's how James Brown had a resurgence. That's how Hamilton Bohannon, that's how Syl Johnson, that's how a lot of these guys, prior to CDs, remember, everything was on vinyl. Then there was a question and an argument about things going onto compact discs, remember? And that was
right
to life. Sampling brought back to life a lot of that music. And I don't think those producers and those artists get enough credit for revitalizing as much music as they did.
Right. Well, I gotta say thank you for not only inspiring the producers that are listening, but inspiring myself, because I'm so excited. I was talking to the artist that I'm doing this project for, exclusively using samples from Tracklib, and he could hear it in my voice. It's just there is nothing like touching the original master recordings of sample or just music from a certain era where you know that everything from the social climate to the way music was being recorded, it just has a special feeling. The vinyl has a special, there's so many, VSTs and special effects that can add it to the music we work on now, and there's nothing like the original. So I want to say thank you once again for your time. Last question, and then I'll give some contact information and whatnot for the audience. So where do you see the art and the business of sampling in the next 20 years?
think
If
it's
you would
going
have,
it's
sorry.
going to continue. I think people are going to keep sampling. It's like when you say, well, where do you see cooking? Where do you see paintings? Where do you see photography? This is the same thing. It's always going to continue to grow and expand. I think people are always going to sample because it's become the norm. It's not just hip hop and rap. It's in country, it's in pop, it's in alternative, it's in all genre of music.
Sure.
And so what it's become is a style, it's an art, it's a technique. And I always say to my staff, in 20 years, this will still be going on.
That's amazing. I know that's good for business too. So, well, Deborah, we want to say thank you for your time. Thank you for these amazing answers and inspiring answers. Now, my audience is very broad. It goes from up and coming music producers and artists to even established artists. I have, artists that are signed to major labels that are always watching videos. What would you say is the best way for them to contact your company if they indeed need your services? I know they're not cheap, but
Actually, it's not bad. My fees are listed right there on my website.
Okay.
So I'm very transparent. So my fees haven't gone up in like 3 years.
Okay.
And prior to that, when I raised my fees, it had been 5 years. So I charge $325 per side per stage. When I started my business back in 1996, it was $200.
Oh, wow.
Not a big increase, as you can see.
Yeah.
And the whole point of that is so when you've got samples on your album, you know what my fees are going to be. And the best way to reach me is hit me with an email, Deborah@dmgclearances.com. We have a policy. We respond to every single email. A phone call's harder because, like, for example, it's coming closer to the holiday season. And like after this, I have phone meetings every half hour until 5:30.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. But I can multitask. I can be on the phone. I can do a conference. I can be on my laptop. I can answer emails all at the same. If you look at my desk, I have 3 computers all next to each other.
Oh, my gosh.
So if you email me, the best thing is, tell me where you heard me, because I do a lot of, I actually travel. I speak on panels all over the world. I've been to Paris. I've been to South Africa. I've been to Sweden. I've been to, I go all over. So just email me. Tell me where you heard me speak. And then ask your questions in writing. Articulate what you're seeking. Are you seeking a budget? Are you seeking guidance? What exactly is it? If someone sends me an email and says, you know what, I'm thinking of using Anita Baker, I'm going to say, you know what, pull it. It's not going to happen. So that's how fast I work. So send me emails. The only deal is if you use someone else to clear your sample after asking me questions, don't ever contact me back again.
Ooh, good to know. Good to know. I respect that. I highly respect that. And I got to say thank you on behalf, because I'm an artist and a producer myself. So on behalf of us, people like you are angels to us, because, to be able to have an idea, repurpose it, sample it, whatever you want to call it, and when it's presented to the masses, but to be stopped and have an obstacle of someone who is the original, owner of it, by all means, it is a blessing to have individuals like yourself who go to bat for us. So thank you for all the work that you do. And that's it. But thank you so much.
My pleasure, really. Thank you.
Okay. So music producers and rappers, thank you for watching today. Once again, I have all this information in the description below. As you can hear, young Nas is in the background going crazy, so I must attend to the young one. But thank you once again for your time, Deborah. We'll talk soon.
Absolutely. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.